But first to our top story today, and let's start with that massive takeover offer for Santos, which ended abruptly yesterday. Today, Santos shares posted a slight recovery throughout the session after yesterday's 12% plunge, and that followed the Abu Dhabi government-backed consortium walking away from the $36 billion deal. There are many rumours going around about why Abu Dhabi backed out, and until now, Santos has remained silent. But today, business editor Ross Greenwood spoke with Santos Chief Executive Kevin Gallagher, who was at the company's operations in Narrabri in New South Wales.
Look, I wouldn't say I was surprised. I mean, my approach to these things has always been that it's business as usual until it's not, and very, very focused on running the business in a business as usual way until we know exactly how these things pan out. Look, it's always a risk. There's a lot more to these deals than just simply agreeing on price. And so to go from a non-binding phase to a binding phase and get all the various terms negotiated and agreed is always a tough period with very extensive due diligence during that period as well. And so it's always a possibility, right? And so it's very important that the core business stays focused on delivering on its key projects. And in this case, unfortunately, XRG just couldn't get there, and so we move on. And it's very important now everyone at Santos stays focused on delivering our major projects that we've been promising to bring through now for the last 3 or 4 years. And we're very close to delivering on those. And so our focus is very much on the go forward.
We'll get to some of those in a moment, but I want to go to some of the speculation late this week as to why this deal might have fallen through. Some suggest it's capital gains tax on your PNG assets. There's other things, including the guarantee to supply gas to the east coast of Australia. Some suggesting maybe it was just a realisation that Jim Chalmers and the Foreign Investment Review Board would not approve this deal. And then there's also suggestions that a gas leak at your joint venture with ConocoPhillips in Darwin could also have been a reason. Any of those actually ring or have resonance with you?
Look, I think when it comes down to risk allocation between the two sides, risk is always a major issue in any of these transactions. On the first couple you talk about there, taxation for the buyer is always a challenge, and how you're going to structure the deal and structure the entities that own the various assets after a deal in order to understand what your tax position would be. That would be a position for XRG to review, and that's not really a Santos issue. Those sort of tax issues that you're referring to are not tax issues for Santos as we stand today. They'd only be tax issues for anybody buying Santos and having to pay any capital gains taxes on that. In terms of domestic gas supply, of course, Santos would have an expectation of any buyer that if they come in, they would make commitments to the domestic gas market on a go-forward basis. And so if the other party wasn't able to agree to those, or agree to those at least in the agreement, that would always be a concern from the Santos side. As for the Treasurer and for FIRB approvals, they, of course, would make their assessments on those risks, and they would have to decide whether they felt good or otherwise about the prospects of getting those approvals. And I'm sure that would play into their decision making. As for the Darwin issue, that's not really an issue. It was an issue known to their side. It's a known fugitive emissions issue. We've had a Darwin for more than 20 years. It's been public for over 20 years, and certainly that information on the asset was always in the data room. That wasn't anything new that came out just because of media speculation or something that some parties raised in the last few weeks. It's a long known factor, and it's important to recognise too that the fugitive emissions in Darwin, even with those fugitive emissions from the tank, are still below what most of industry is setting as 2030 emissions targets for fugitive emissions on plants of this type. So we've got a very low level of fugitive emissions overall, even including the tank.